Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So say that again. When you went to visit your grandmother.
Occasionally, as a boy, my grandmother Schubert
Mm-hmm.
lived in New Lexington, and Dad would get usually mother and I, because my sister was older and wasn't around or didn't want to go. I don't remember. Uh, we would drive Dad's 1928 Pontiac vehicle. It was kind of a boxy black car, and it had cushiony padding in the seat with a pocket that you could pull out. You know, the place to put things was a little pull-out pocket, and I would ride in the back, of course, and we would. They lived on the top of a hill where it was difficult to see traffic, and so Dad would go past the house, which sat on a hill itself, and turn around and park with two wheels in the street, in the road. It was a highway, and the highway, and two wheels up in some man's yard, for which he had gotten permission to park there for an hour or two while we were across the street visiting his mother. And his mother, uh, they were poor people. The Schuberts were poor people, and mother cooked on a coal stove. She had lumps of coal. Her husband was a coal miner. Coal, which she would put in, and knew exactly how much coal and how to treat the fire in order to get the right heat to make food and so on. I believe later on there was a gas uh, burner installed in somewhere in their entry hallway that she could use that to cook on. But I did visit uh, my cousin uh, Roger occasionally, and I remember staying over for several nights, perhaps a week, and Grandma would feed us whatever she had, and we ate it. And I don't remember what it was, and Roger and I would go out and play around. When I was old enough in high school or early to have a Whizzer bicycle, that's a bike with a motor on it in those days. Uh, I once rode the 25 miles to New Lexington. It was an air-cooled engine, and I was tired of riding, so about halfway I would stop and got off, and I sat in the grass or something until the motor cooled down. Whether that was necessary or not, I don't know, but I didn't want to be stranded out there. And then I would finish my trip, and Roger had a Cushman motor scooter, and it was kind of noisy, big red thing, and I'd always envied having such a thing. And so one day we were out visiting a reservoir or something just outside of town of New Lexington, and he suggested we trade vehicles, and I could ride his scooter back home, and he would ride my Whizzer back home, and he knew a back way to get up the rather steep hills in New Lexington, so he knew we could go around this way and not have to pedal our bikes too much. And of course, his scooter was much more powerful than my bicycle was, so he didn't have to pedal up the hills either. But now I forgot where I was.
No, that's fine. You were heading home. You swapped the bikes, but
Yeah, well, I was talking about just visiting Grandma Schubert there, Grandma Westenbarger, Dad's mother, and eventually Grandpa Schubert did die first, and she was a widow for a while, and then she moved. Eventually, Roger moved to Columbus. Roger was in Columbus at that time working, and Grandma lived with him for a while, and then I believe she may have died when she was in Columbus, and she and he both are buried in Forest Rose Cemetery in Lancaster, and then Roger, his wife died, and last I was able to find on Google was that he was living with who I believe was one of his two sons. He had two sons and a daughter. He had a son and a daughter, and one of the sons was killed as a 16-year-old boy on a motorbike, I believe. And as a result of that, they had a second son born after that son died. So they had a boy and a girl.
wow.
And I don't know anything about the girl. I don't remember her name even. But the boy, who I never met, was living in Northern Virginia.
Hmm.
I'm remembering Christiansburg or something of that, like in Virginia.
So you got to travel or get yourself to New Lex. Um, what else? else? Did you have? You said at one point that your father used to take the train down to Athens and then go and visit family. That was a family in Albany.
Yeah, when my grandfather Elman worked for the railroad, he had free passes for the railroad trains that went all over the place, and it was not unusual apparently for grandmother Westenbarger, Schubert later, and dad and perhaps other sons to take the train to Athens, Ohio, and get off the train in Athens, Ohio, and be picked up by someone with a vehicle, I believe, not a horse and buggy, to go for grandma to visit her parents on the farm in Albany. There was a story that my dad told me, however, that once his mother wanted to visit one of her relatives that was in a different state, Illinois possibly, I don't remember, but they got on the train and they traveled probably to Cincinnati, and they traveled all the way over to southern Illinois, and where grandma was going to meet with this relative or friend of hers, and dad convinced her to let him go on all the way to St. Louis on the line, and then get on a train back from St. Louis, all free of charge, and meet up with her back there, and they would travel home again together.
And he was how old at this point, you think?
I assume he was in high school age or slightly before that, possibly.
Okay, so this would have been the 19...
It would have to be in the 1920s because
1920s.
Grandpa died in 23 when Dad was a junior in high school. So it would have been his early high school, late grade school in Lancaster.
But your parents, Ralph and Edna, were married on Christmas Day, 1925, right?
25.
When he was 19 years old.
Yes.
So it was somewhere in the mid 1920s.
Yeah.
He was still with his mother, helping her get to where she needed to be.
It had to be before this strike happened, because the grandfather Elman still had permission to ride in the railroad.
Right after he died, he didn't. Or
yeah,
after he was no longer
so
with
23 is the possible end of that, but it likely was earlier than that because he worked in this lens factory for I only know probably a year or two before he became sick and died from that.
And since Ralph was born in 06, in 1920 he would have been 14, so it's somewhere in his early teens, in the early 20s, sometime around then, before 1923. Wow. Yes. Okay, that's a great story.
But otherwise, in terms of travel, we would come to Rockridge to visit, bring Grandma to Rockridge to visit her mother, my great-grandmother Ida. And also, very rarely, we would take some trips out into the countryside along with my sister. We would sometimes go, we went to, near Circleville was a famous elm tree. What's the name of that?
Logan elm.
The Logan elm tree was still there, and I actually climbed and sat on one of the branches of the Logan elm tree, but we didn't really go very far in the car, and we did occasionally go to Columbus in the car, in that old car I'm talking about, because that was like an hour and a half or 2 hour trips to go to Columbus, because it went the old road through Carroll and through Canal Winchester and up all the 2-lane highway all the way. And I remember one time my parents had tickets to go to an ice show, I believe, and we were going up the road and we got about as far as Carroll, and the engine, one of the cooling safety valves in the engine broke open, and we were stuck there. And they had to get the car towed back to the company and fixed and so on, but we never got to the ice show as a result of that. No. I do remember that.
Well, that's very sad.
But I also remember Dad having flat tires, and when you had a flat tire in those days, you got out with your tools, your hoist, what do you call it, the pump, and a spare tire.
The jack.
And a jack and a pump usually, and you'd pump up the spare tire and you'd take the hubcap off if there was one, and you'd take the screws out, bolts out, and you'd put your new tire on and you'd let it all down. And it took maybe a half hour or something, but that's what everyone did. There was no AAA to come and rescue you. You were on your own. Otherwise, you'd be hitchhiking back to home or something. And speaking of hitchhiking, my cousin Lanny Deeds and I did do some hitchhiking. He had an old rifle that he wanted to get a repairman to repair, the closest being in southern Columbus in the Bexley area. And so he and I hitchhiked to Columbus, him carrying a rifle. Why anybody would pick us up, I have no idea, but we got a ride up there, and we got up to Bexley, and then it was a long walk, very long walk up a long street toward where Capital University is located, and then we turned right to go toward town, go toward town, and we found the gunsmith, and I'm not sure if I think he fixed the gun on the spot or did whatever, because we carried the gun back. And on the return journey, Lanny was bigger and older and more long-legged than I was, and I was fat and chubby, and so he got fairly well ahead of me, and I would run a little bit, but I could never catch up with him. And he got to the corner where the hitchhiking was going to occur, and he went ahead and hitched a ride and left me behind. He was that sort of person that took after his father in some ways. So there I was, holding my thumb out, hoping I was going to get a ride back to Lancaster. Eventually somebody did pick me up, and I forget where they let me off, but it was all happened after the fact, but that's a story too.
But you were a young teen, you said at the time? Maybe 14?
Probably young teen, yeah. Might have been
16
freshman in high school, I don't remember.
So you were just off on your own, just...
My parents never checked up on me anywhere. I would go out in the morning and be gone all day and come home for lunch maybe or not. And I would go climb Mount Pleasant. From the backside, you climb and climb and climb. There's no rocks there. It's just all forest, but it's steep forest range and so on. And from that back corner, by where I live, the shortest cut up the mountain, you can then get to the top and you can crawl all over the place. And I had 3 or 4 nightmarish kinds of remembrances about places that I could have easily been killed, and nobody was around. There were no other people on the mountain. There was just this one kid climbing around on rocks and going to Devil's Kitchen and finding Indian steps going up places and crawling around ledges and so on. And it's a wonder I'm here, and nobody knew where I was or how long I was going to be there. And if I broke my leg or something and hollered, I don't know if anybody would have found me. But
you couldn't just call them on your cell phone?
I was on my own day and night, basically. The kids on my block played a lot of games like kick the can and hide and seek and stuff like that, and we had a lot of fun on the street with other kids. Sometimes they would go up on the mountain. There'd be a group of us who would go up on the mountain together and do things, not serious things, but we would climb around and so on.
So this was the 1940s, because
this would have been the 40s.
You guys moved to 650 Frederick Street in Lancaster in 1941.
41, yeah. So it was in the 40s, yeah.
Then,
yeah. I would have been 10 years old and 45, so it was maybe after that. I don't know.
Didn't you say you had something happen when you were climbing on construction debris at the house?
Well, yeah, when in 1941, before the house was done, they were still working on the house, and there were piles of dirt where they had dug in the basement and so on, dug out the basement area. Piles of dirt, and I don't know if there was a 2x4 lying there. It was already on top of the mound, but my sister Evelyn, 7.5 years older, decided that would make a good teeter-totter. And so she put the board up on the mound of dirt, and she was on one side and I was on the other. And somehow or other, I managed to fall off and fell and hit myself on a concrete block or something that was there and broke not my wrist, but the arm bone just short of my wrist of my left hand. And so I had an old-time cast, wound up tape and cast with plaster on it and so on, for 6 weeks, 2 months, I don't know.
So did you, when that happened, did they take you to a hospital, or you just went to a doctor's office, or did the doctor come to you?
Probably a doctor's office.
You probably would go to a doctor's office.
Probably not a hospital.
Not a hospital.
Yeah.
Because there's no emergency room in those days.
No, probably not. There was a hospital in Lancaster on Ewing Street, now torn down and replaced by a mammoth, huge hospital facility, yeah.
So did your sister get you into kind of situations like that regularly, or you?
No, she and I had little in common because of the age difference. So she was always doing her own thing. She had her own friends, and I remember one time being sent by my parents to this kind of a teenage hangout to see if she was there. And I rode my bicycle down there, and I went in, and she was there. And I said, "Mom and Dad want you home right now." And so she probably walked home. I don't know, but she did come home. And, yeah, she and I had little in common, as they say. I remember as a kid making radish sandwiches. And what I remember about Evelyn is she would take an apple, and she would eat everything there except the seeds in the core. I mean, she could peel an apple down with her teeth so there's nothing edible left there whatsoever. I never did that myself.
That's great. Let me pause.